If you're considering a move to Portland, Oregon, you probably know that the weather is a little bit different here. It can be wet, it can be cold, it can be gray. In this video, we're going to talk about what the weather is really like in Portland, what you should expect, and all that starts now. Hey, what's up everybody? This is Paul Clem with the Home Team Brokers coming to you from Portland, Oregon. If this is your first time to the channel living in Oregon, make sure to hit the subscribe button and tap the little bell to get notified every time we drop a new video. And we talk to people all the time who are relocating to the Portland area, relocating to Oregon. We love to help with that process as real estate professionals. So if that's you, give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, or click the link down below in the description of the video and schedule a Zoom call with us. Either way, we would love to help with your move to Oregon. All right, so the weather in Oregon, the weather in the Portland metro area is a little bit notorious. And really in the Pacific Northwest, it's no secret that we get a lot of rain, we get a lot of overcast, but I think to some degree, it's probably a little bit overblown. Now, if you live here and if you spend a few years here, you're going to acclimate, you're going to get used to it for sure. Not everybody does though. And so if you're coming from a climate that is sunny, 350 days out of the year, it's definitely going to be a little bit of a shock. The majority of the year in Portland is definitely cloudy and overcast, and we get 164 days of rain a year. That's third most in the United States. So yes, we get a lot of rain, but is it all it's cracked up to be? Well, that's part of what we want to discuss in this video. I think first and foremost, really what you need to know about, there's a big old bee right there. I think first and foremost, what you really need to know about moving to the Portland metro area is that we get 4 seasons throughout the year. So every 3 months, the weather completely transforms, the landscape transforms, and you get kind of a fresh new start. And that's really something that people tend to like, whether they've lived here their whole lives or they've just moved to the area, they've visited the area, and they've experienced, the spring, the summer, the fall, the winter. You get a distinctly different dynamic in each time of the year. And again, I think ultimately that's a really big draw, especially when you're talking about people coming from, northern climates that are very, very cold, and don't get really great summers, or places that are really, really hot, that are just sunny all the time. It's typically a little more brown in those areas, and you don't see a lot of things changing throughout the year. There's also climates like high desert climates that we actually have here in Oregon, out in Central Oregon, where you really get 2 seasons. You get winter and summer, really cold, snowy, or really hot and dry. But here in Portland in particular, you get these 4 seasons. And I would say overall that is a benefit. That's a pro of the weather that we get in this area. But overall, we have really pretty moderate climate compared to the rest of the country. It doesn't get too hot, it doesn't get too cold, without some exception, of course. There's really nothing that extreme where we have intense blizzards and whiteouts and ice for weeks throughout the year, or these days, in stretches of days or weeks where we have 110, 115 degrees. Although it's 2022 now, last year in 2021, in June, there was 3 days where it was 115, 116 degrees, which shattered the record for heat in the Portland metro area. So, is that a sign of things to come, or is that just a complete one-off and anomaly? It's tough to say exactly. It does feel like the summers in the last 4, 5, 6 years have been notably hotter on average, but also stretches of days where you get 100 degrees or high 90s. And if you're here throughout the year and you're used to these relatively moderate temperatures, to kind of colder and rainier days, those 100-degree days can really feel pretty extreme. So it's all relative, again, where you're coming from, but also if you're here, what you're experiencing most of the time versus these little flashes that we can get get in particular in the winter and in the summer. So we talked about the rain. Again, we know that Portland is notoriously a rainy place, but you have to take the good with the bad and vice versa to some extent. I mean, this is also a very green place, and the rain nourishes all of these green spaces, all the foliage, all the vegetation throughout the year. So we have these late spring, summers, and early falls that are really green and lush, and it allows us to get out and enjoy the outdoors, and it just makes for an overall beautiful landscape. So that's something that we can't get without the rain. And really the rainiest time of year, the rainiest stretch of year, is about November through March. So that late fall through winter and through early spring, you're going to get majority days that are cold, overcast, and it does tend to rain a lot. But I think one thing that is a notable difference, especially compared to other parts of the country, is yes, we get a lot of days of rain, but it might rain for 5 or 10 minutes one day. That still counts as a day of rain. And so it does rain relatively infrequently, and it's usually not like a torrential downpour. I think in the spring, sometimes in the winter, you can get some pretty heavy rain for sometimes stretches of a few days, and that can obviously get pretty daunting. But overall, most of the time, it's a little more of a mist, it's a little more of a light rain, and it might rain in the morning or it might rain a little bit in the afternoon, but it's not going to be a constant drizzle for 6 months of the year necessarily. So on one hand, yes, it might be a little bit of a shift or even a shock compared to where you're coming from, but the people who live here certainly tolerate it. I mean, you don't really go anywhere, that stretch of the year in particular, November through March, without a raincoat at least handy, because it could certainly rain at any time. But again, the temperatures are pretty mild. And even in the coldest times of the year, you can get some pretty tolerable temperatures. The rain can make the cold a little worse, but bundle up a little bit. People still get outside. People still, walk to the park, walk to the coffee shop, do all those things. It doesn't really, keep people hunkered down all that much. And so for context too, when we talk about the rain and being a little bit more of a light drizzle, I mean, Portland gets 36 inches annually, and that's not even close to the rainiest city in the country, which is New Orleans, gets 62 inches a year. So yes, we do get a lot of days of rain, but it's not very heavy, and it's not always really that consistent. And Portland's not quite as rainy as Seattle either. Seattle gets a little bit more rain throughout the year. In fact, when you look at the Pacific Northwest, Portland does tend to be warmer on average in the warmer months and a little bit colder on average in the colder months than Seattle as well. So we do edge a little bit more toward the extremes as far as temperature. Compared to Seattle, which stays in a little bit more of a tighter pocket as far as the range of temperatures. But again, it's still really mild here. In fact, the weather, throughout the year, really on average, you're going to be in the range of about mid 40s, 45 to mid 70s, about 75. So the majority of the year, it can get a little bit cold and it can get really quite pleasant. I think most people, tend to prefer kind of day to day that maybe mid to high 70s, maybe low 80s, but even a high 60s day when the sun is out, it can feel warm and it's really quite pleasant. It's not too hot. So we get a lot of these stretches, in particular in the spring and late summer and fall, where it's really not hot. You get sunshine, but you don't have to bundle up. I mean, you can wear, like I am today, shorts and a t-shirt. Here we are nearing the end of summer. And so we really stay in that pretty moderate pocket in terms of temperature. Now, December tends to be the coldest month, so you kind of get winter out of the way early, typically. You can get cold spells and some snow in January, February. We had snow in April this year, so, you can get a little bit of snow even into the spring a little bit, but that's not very common. Usually if we're gonna get snow, it's gonna be late December or early January, but in December, you're looking at lows of average mid 30s to highs of average low 40s. So it does tend to get pretty cold, and it seems like almost every year, maybe every couple of years, especially in December, there's always like a 5 to 7 day stretch where it's below 30 degrees, and it might warm up to 35, 36 during the day, but then it always drops back down, you know, to like 25, 27, 28 degrees. And that obviously can get really cold. You know, you're scraping the ice off your windshield in the morning. You got to watch out for the roads. I mean, they don't really salt the roads too much around here unless things get pretty bad. So it obviously can, you know, can be a little bit dangerous, but if you're coming from a place that deals with snow consistently, you know, you probably know what you're doing as far as navigating the roads. Portland doesn't really have the infrastructure to deal with the ice and the snow in particular. You know, we don't have snow plows plowing the street. We're just not really set up for it. So that is something that you have to factor in. Usually when it snows here, the school shut down, you know, people get to take off work, or probably more likely nowadays, you know, they just work from home if they don't already. Either way, December is definitely the coldest month, and then it's really kind of all, you know, downhill from there as far as slowly warming up through January, February. I can recall some Februaries where early mid-February, you know, you have a day of like 75 degrees and sunshine. So you get these little one-offs and anomalies at times, of course, just like anywhere else probably. And then August tends to be the warmest month of the year, where you're looking at an average high of 81 and an average low of 58. So a pretty big range there. Summers can be really, really mild, or summers can be really, really hot. We almost always have a heat wave. And whether that comes in June, July, August, or we get a few over the summer, it really kind of varies from year to year. But August on average is the hottest month. I mean, this last August, it seems like we were averaging more like low to mid 90s for long stretches, but the average being 81, obviously, you know, pretty easy to deal with, you know, 58, 60, 62 in the morning. So really pretty pleasant, not too cold even in the morning. And so really, you know, you kind of start to warm up early summer into August at its peak, and then early September after Labor Day, you can get some hot weather still, but it really starts to cool off pretty quickly. It is September 13th right now. Just in the last couple of days, the temperatures dropped like 10 to 15 degrees, and you get a little bit of overcast in the morning. All this will probably burn off by the afternoon, and that's how the days typically are at this time of year. So again, it's really pretty pleasant. It's not sunshine and really hot, you know, what a lot of people consider nice weather all of the time, but it's pretty easy to deal with. So to recap what you're going to be expecting over these seasons that are all, you know, have very distinct weather. Starting with winter, you're going to be looking at, you know, mid 30s to low 40s on average. You're going to start to get a lot of rain day to day. Honestly, this is the time of year where it can get pretty miserable. I mean, when people talk about the Pacific Northwest or Portland having bad weather, I mean, it's really this stretch through November to March, really November to like February, where you're gonna get pretty tired of it probably, but it's not unbearable. And you can expect to see snow every year, but it seems like every couple years, really every 3 to 4 years, you're gonna get like 6 to 12 inches of snow. It's gonna stick around for a few days. Typically, a lot of people enjoy it because it is so infrequent. Obviously, if we were having weeks and months of snow every winter, you know, that probably gets a little bit old, but you know, usually when it snows here, you kind of take the day off, you know, you go to the park, you go sledding, you have a snowball fight, stuff like that. I mean, that's generally what snow days are like in this part of the country. And then into spring, you're gonna be getting kind of mid 40s to mid 60s. So a little bit of a bigger range. You can get some pretty warm days, especially coming out of winter. You know, mid 60s with sunshine starts to feel pretty warm. That you know, mid 40s, high 40s with rain, you're gonna see a lot of that in the spring as well, and so it's gonna be kind of more of a continuation of the winter coming into the early spring. And you get some flashes of sunshine here and there. You know, you start to see things turning green again, you start to see the flowers blooming. It's a great time of year. In fact, this is the time of year where you get kind of the most epic weather patterns. You know, you get a lot of hail, you get these big clouds, you know, these epic clouds in the sky. We've always kind of referred to it as the battle, you know, between spring and winter. Once spring comes around and, you know, the sunshine's trying to start to peak out a little bit and the weather's trying to start to turn over. And then finally you get into mid to late spring and you get a little more consistent sunshine, a little bit warmer weather. People start putting the shorts on, hanging out outside a little bit more. But the rain really does continue through the spring. In fact, this spring in 2022, I believe was the rainiest spring we had on record, or at least it was the rainiest April we had on record, but it felt like we had 5-6 weeks consistent of rain. So, you know, depending on the year, that's something that you might have to deal with, you know, all the way through May into early June. You know, you might be seeing a lot of overcast and a lot of rain more than you're going to be seeing sunshine. And then of course you start to break into the summer where you get averages of more like 60 to 80 degrees. And it's much more pleasant. You can get some one-off heat waves. You can have stretches of high 90s to low hundreds. It seems like more and more every year. I mean, the summers seem to be getting a little bit hotter, but this is the time of year that everybody looks forward to for sure. And in Portland, you know, I think it's always kind of been considered that summer really starts around the 4th of July. So a few weeks after summer officially starts is when we really start to see the consistent sunny days, and that generally lasts through Labor Day. But we can have those Indian summers where September can still be pretty hot some years, even into early October. That's always a nice surprise, you know, when we continue that sunshine through the summer. But it does get gradually hotter, you know, from June, July to August, and then to early September, it starts to cool off a little bit. And then into the fall, this is a lot of people's favorite time of year. Most people are gonna say summer, but in the fall is probably where you see the most dramatic change as far as seeing the season change, and probably most notably because you see the leaves changing on the trees. Of course, we have a lot of pines and fir trees and evergreens around here, but there's also a ton of deciduous trees. So you see a lot of trees, you know, the leaves turn orange and brown. It's really beautiful. You know, people start going to pumpkin patches and doing all those fall activities. You know, the air is a little bit more crisp in the morning. I mean, you can wake up, go out your front door in the morning, and you can just kind of smell the air. You can feel the seasons changing around you. So it's a really nice, pleasant time of year, especially that early fall, which really kind of starts late September into October. You start to get into probably closer to like upper 40s to mid 50s to high 50s on average. Again, getting kind of colder into November and then into the winter. So I think one thing, for better or worse, you know, I mean, nobody here takes the sun for granted, for sure. And I think going through such long stretches of overcast and rain throughout the year really makes the people around here appreciate the sunshine when it comes out, and we really take full advantage of the summer when it comes around. I think one thing that's kind of funny though is, you know, obviously by January, everybody's complaining about the cold and the rain, and they just want sunshine, they want summer to come. But typically by mid to late August, people are starting to complain about the heat, you know, saying it's too hot, I'm ready for fall. So, you know, there's always something to look forward to, there's always something to anticipate. And I think because things do change so much and so dramatically throughout the year, you know, you get really nice warm weather in the summer, but then, you know, it starts to get hot, you know, you want things to cool off a little bit, and it cools off for long enough, you know, you start to get rain and some weather that most people would consider probably less desirable. It's like, okay, now I want the sunshine again. So that's kind of the routine and the cycle that we go through every year here. So I think overall, you know, most people do tend to enjoy the weather here, although we do get a little bit of a bad rap. And again, you know, the rain is notorious. I think because things do change so consistently, and because we do get a lot of very nice, pleasant weather for really about half the year, I think, you know, people saying the weather here being bad is probably a little bit overstated, but it does depend on where you're coming from and what your preferences are. You know, a lot of people are escaping the heat from areas that get really hot and stay really hot throughout the year, and they want temperatures that are a little milder. And some people are coming from warmer climates that really enjoy that. They love the sunshine. That, you know, they like getting out, being outdoors and enjoying things. Well, you know, around here, people get out and enjoy the outdoors year round, rain or shine. That's just kind of how it goes. And that's really kind of what you have to do. You have to be up against the elements a little bit, but with the proper gear, obviously, you know, it's still possible. So again, I think for most people, it's pretty tolerable, if not enjoyable, and there's always something to look forward to as far as the seasons changing. But there's also things like seasonal affective disorder, which a lot of people talk about in this area because it is so gray. You know, you go through these long stretches without seeing the sun. So if that's legitimately a concern, you know, if you've spent time in places like Seattle or Portland or areas of the country where you get a lot of gray and overcast, you know, it might be a real deterrent for actually ending up here, because it is something that people do deal with. But I know there's ways that you can mitigate that too. So again, it really comes down to, you know, a case by case or person by person basis overall. When it comes to owning a home, you know, there are some steps that you can take, and that's something that as real estate professionals, we can help walk you through. Like, you know, you want to cover your faucets in the winter. Once you start seeing, high 30s, mid 30s in the forecast, okay, you know, it could definitely get below freezing. Cover up your faucets so your pipes don't freeze. Obviously in the fall, you know, these trees are going to be losing their leaves, so you're going to be spending a lot of time raking, or you're going to need to hire a landscaping company to come out really about once every couple of weeks to be raking up leaves and, you know, putting them in your yard debris. And, you know, that can be a lot of work or a little bit of money invested to take care of that. You know, and of course you're definitely going to want to clean your gutters, because, you know, we do lose a lot of leaves, and even the little pine needles and things that fall off of trees, that can clog the gutters. And then it rains so much that if the gutters are overflowing, that can cause water to, you know, get underneath your house and things like that. So those are all things that we can talk about, you know, as far as what you need to do to mitigate any, you know, potential issues in regards to weather as far as your home goes. Either way, if you have any questions about weather, if there's anything that we didn't talk about, or if there's anything that I missed in this video, make sure to leave it in the comments. And if you are considering a move to the Portland metro area, give us a call, send us a text, shoot us an email, or click the link down below in the description of the video. Schedule a Zoom call with us. We can come up with a game plan, talk about your timeline, your home search, and get you started off on the right track with your move to Portland. Make sure to subscribe to this channel if you want to continue to get videos like this. Make sure to hit the like button if this video is helpful. That helps us out a lot. As always, we appreciate you watching, and until next time, we'll talk to you later.